Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Sean Greene. I run the Investment and Innovation Programs at the Small Business Administration, as SBA, and I'm here to talk about Project RFP-EZ, which is a project to make it easier for startups to sell to the federal government and to make procurement of federal IT better, cheaper, and faster. So to put it in context, I think everybody in the room and those watching at home know that particularly in the world of the web and mobile development, costs have come down dramatically, 5x or more. And personally, as someone who formerly was a web entrepreneur and investor, what I've seen is a massive disconnect between how technology is being used in the private sector and how it's being used in government. And I see that manifested itself in the frustration of entrepreneurs who have tried to sell to the federal government. And literally you see a quote there from a startup entrepreneur who said, no matter how faster and better and cheaper my product, it's just impossible to sell to the federal government. I see frustration in venture capitalists who advise their portfolio companies, don't bother trying to sell to the government. It's too much time, it's not worth the energy, it's not worth the bandwidth. And if investors are saying this and telling their portfolio companies not to bother selling to the largest customer in the world, then we have something fundamentally wrong. At the same time, we see opportunity. And I'll pick on Todd, as others have, to give an example of when Todd was CTO at Health and Human Services, a team within HHS came to him saying, Todd, we got a problem. We've got an important need here. The initial estimate on the technology to serve this project is $5 million. We just don't have that much in our budget. And so Todd worked with the team, pointed them to look at cloud-based solutions. And as a result of that, the team was able to go ahead, find some innovative companies that could deliver the solution for just over $400,000, 10x cheaper. And so the opportunity and the challenge in front of us is, how do we replicate that? How do we make that happen more often? And why should we care? Because there's a tremendous opportunity for a win-win here. For the federal government, the win is an opportunity to save taxpayer dollars or get far more bang for the buck. And with federal IT procurement, we're talking about $80 billion, a massive, massive opportunity. But it's also an opportunity for the innovative startups, who, by the way, are the ones who create all of the net new jobs in the economy. And so as I've traveled around the country talking to hundreds, more than 1,000 entrepreneurs, and we ask them what barriers they're facing to growing their companies and creating jobs, we've heard about things like access to capital, changing immigration policy, that we're excited about the success and progress we've made. But what I've also heard is, hey, make it easier to sell to the federal government, right? People have told me, make it easier. I know my product is better, cheaper, but help me get my foot in the door. And so the opportunity we have in front of us is to help take this success story that I pointed to Todd, and let's replicate that and scale that at a much bigger level. And let's help a lot more innovative companies get their foot in the door. So to understand how to do that, let's start with understanding the problem. The fundamental problem is complexity. So here's how the federal procurement process works for the uninitiated. So all clearly mapped out right there with an example from the Department of Defense. So you're a startup who's already working ridiculous hours. Where do you begin? Startups don't have dedicated teams to help navigate the federal procurement process. And at its core, we have a problem when the process for $150,000 software procurement works the same way that it does for a $150 million procurement. More broadly, as we think about the problem, what we see is a fundamental gap between the innovative startups and federal buyers. So how do they find each other, right? Most federal buyers don't hang out on TechCrunch to find out what's the latest and what's happening with innovative startups. The startups don't hang out on FedBizOps or Federal Register. Even if they know where to find each other, what we're seeing is they speak different languages. Startups don't speak government acronymese, right? People looking to do web development for the government may have to know how to search on terms like content information distribution platform. So how do we get over the language barrier? And then how do we challenge the issue of just different timeframes, right? The traditional RFP process that works in the federal government is 3 lifetimes for a startup. How do we address those challenges? So our solution is something we're calling RFP-EZ, right? So RFP is request for proposal. That's the traditional way government initiates a contracting procedure. We're borrowing from a successful example, the 1040 EZ in the metaphor, right, that we all know, that took something fairly complicated and said, hey, for a subset of the people who don't need all that complexity, how do we make something easier to work? And we said, let's bring that concept to procurement. Specifically, we'll start with federal IT. And at its core, what we're trying to do is build a marketplace of buyers and sellers to bring together fragmented buyers and sellers to make transactions happen. And to the economists in the room, this is all about lowering transaction costs. But to the entrepreneurs in the room, it's about making it faster and simpler. So we're going to do that by focusing on a couple of different things. First, we're going to focus on discovery. How do we help the buyers and sellers find each other? With an opportunity to leverage things like online directories, simple video demos of products and services to help each other know what's available, and as appropriate, in-person demo days that we know have worked very effectively in the private sector, right? Because in the discovery process, you've got a chicken and egg problem, right? If there aren't enough government buyers, you can't get the innovative startups to come. If you don't have innovative startups with good products, the buyers won't come. So simplifying a process by which you can communicate helps that discovery process. At the end of the day, though, what we really want to do is to drive more transactions. And so changing and creating templates and simplified processes for easier transactions are critically important as well. So have a screenshot here of one specific module that the team has been focused on that we're calling Statement of Work Composer. The whole idea here is a simple templated solution that creates statements of work for a specific procurement. Why this matters is to the program officer who wants to do the buy, by leveraging a template, half of the work is already done, and they can get it done faster. To contracting officers, they then know that the language in this has been reviewed by a group of their peers to make sure it's valid, legitimate, et cetera. And then to the small business, it's written in plain English in terms friendly to them, understandable to them, to make it happen. So I point to a Statement of Work Composer not as an idea of something that we want to do, but I'm incredibly pleased to say the team is already ready to ship this product. So in a spirit of rapid innovation, they said, no pressure to the other teams that haven't shipped anything yet, but the team has already written the code for this. For the developers paying attention, they'll be posting the code to GitHub later this afternoon. And very much in a spirit of, let's get something up and running, let's get people to kick the tires, give feedback, and we'll rapidly innovate and improve from there.